welcome to Polymer Clay TV. Today we are talking about covering glass. We get asked this question a lot because there are tips that you need to know about covering glass, and I've covered hundreds and hundreds of pieces of glass in my career. I mean, from large vases to wine glasses to votive candle holders, there's a lot of different things that you can put polymer clay on. So you want to know the techniques first before you get started so that your piece doesn't fall apart or the pieces fall off, which is never fun. So I'm going to be using some silk screens. I've already made my silk screens, and we have tons of videos on how to do silk screening. It's really easy. You just put the silk screen down on the clay, take your paint and use your squeegee and bring it across and peel it off, and you've got fantastic designs. Really, it's that simple. And like I said, we have tons of videos on it. I'm using here the tiny tiles. This is the tiny tiles, and this is called This and That. It's a little bit of everything. Actually, here's kind of upside down. So you can see they're really cool, and I thought they would look nice together. And so what I did was I had these bottles, and I used the chalk paint, but you can use any acrylic paint you want, or if you want to use pigments or whatever, it's totally up to you. However, with pigments, you're going to probably have to seal it because you'll be using these items, and that's one of the things you need to think about. If you're going to be using it, if it's a functional item, then you want to choose your whatever mediums you're going to do that will work where you're handling it all the time. If not, you're going to have to seal it. And that's one of the times that you would seal. I don't generally seal my clay. However, if it's pigments and it's going to get used and handled, you really need to. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about covering glass. Glass will not permanently bond to the clay. It doesn't do that. However, the clay will stick to the glass, and it'll stay there for many, many, many years. So if you do it right. So one of the things I can tell you is you really need to cover the clay, or cover the glass or mostly cover it for your clay to stay. So for instance, if I took a little piece of clay and I stuck it here, and I took another little piece of clay and I stuck it here, these pieces are not going to stay. They will come off, and I can guarantee you they will come off. I've done enough of this to know, and I've traveled around the country doing art shows where I had made pieces and I had to travel with it, so it got bumped around and stuff. So I know from experience that it will not stay. You can glue it on there, it still won't stay. You're going to have issues. However, if it's connected to each other, that's how you get it to stay. So for instance, you see here, it goes all the way around. These are actually the two designs that I've combined together. Now, once I have them going all the way around, I could then come back and say, use a cookie cutter and cut out a circle or a heart or whatever. But the general large part of the piece is all connected and will stay on the glass, rather than putting random pieces here and there which will not stay on the glass. So you have to think about that when you're designing your piece, that, you know, if you do want to have like extra doodads on it or whatever, you either want to add it on top of the clay that's already formed around it, where, for instance, say I don't have anything really to stick on. Well, I can show you with this. So say I have this piece that I made and I want it stuck on here. It doesn't really go, but I'm just giving you a for instance. You would put this on afterwards. And, you know, after you've got your base coat of clay. I guess that's the only way I can say it. Like, you need something that's covering most of the glass piece so that it doesn't come off. And I can tell you right now, something like this will stay on there forever. It will. It just will, unless you break a piece or whatever. And once you add this on top of the clay, it'll stay on there too, because it has the clay holding it and bonding to this other piece of clay. Whereas if you're putting it on the glass and you have all these open places, there's really not a place that it can bond to. However, if it's sticking to the clay, as you can see, the two different designs, I've got it stuck together, it's not going anywhere. So that's one tip right there. Another thing you want to make sure your clay is conditioned well. You don't want crumbly clay because that'll also pull away from the glass. So you want your clay to be conditioned well. You don't want cracks in it. That's important. And, you know, you can just plan out what you want to do as you go. Another thing is you have to watch for air pockets, because an air pocket is going to also make the clay separate from the glass, which makes a place where it can break apart or fall apart. So these are things that you really have to remember when working with glass. And yes, the glass can go in the oven. You can bake right on the glass. It won't give you any issues. Glass doesn't even melt to like the thousands of degrees. And you're only putting this in the oven at 275 degrees up to maybe 300 depending on the clay you're using. So no worries. You can totally bake glass. You can totally bake metal as well. So those are the two things you can work with. So you can even use a metal container. If I wanted to cover the top, which I don't, but if I wanted to, I could do that too because this is metal. So metal and glass, the clay really adheres to, but you have to follow these rules. Make sure there's no air pockets. Make sure you cover the piece almost completely, and make sure your clay is conditioned well and not crumbly. Once you get through those steps, you're golden. So let's get started with this. So as always, I like to have a flat edge, you know, straight edge rather. So I'm going to cut a little. And like I said, if you've never silkscreened before, if you want to learn that technique, there's tons of videos on our YouTube channel for that. So I want to take my edge, and I want to start, I always start, I should say, at the bottom. But you have to decide which way you want your clay to go, because some of these are directional. Some of the designs are directional. And this one's a little directional, so I think I'm going to go this way here. Let me just cut off all the edges. And so I want to start at an edge, and I also want to start at the bottom. That's how I like to do it, because then you can kind of see where you're going. So you want to gently smooth it on, and to help you so you know there's no air pockets, or to help stop so many air pockets, you want to gently kind of roll it on and coax it with your hand as you go, feeling that there's no pockets of air getting trapped in there. See how it creates a nice little space for it? I'm not going to mess with the top right now, just leave that alone, and we're going to add this piece. So let me square up all the edges here again, or straighten up, I should say. And I've got enough to go around here, and to go around this whole piece. It's not that big. You know, obviously if you have something bigger, you'll have to plan your design. But I had these two and I wanted to use them. And so again, I'm going to start down at the bottom. And this one's not really so directional, so I can be a little more, you know, creative or whatever if I want it to be. So again, I want to butt these up, but I don't want them to overlap. That's the idea behind what I'm doing here. I'm gently getting them to butt up, making sure that, again, I'm not trapping any air. And then I'm going to use my finger to help press it on and meld the two sides there. You can come back and use an acrylic rod. You can use a tool if you have one of the ultimate tools. They're really good because you can get in there and really get them to meld nicely without distorting it. Acrylic rod can be cumbersome sometimes. And so when you think you have it, flip it over, and this is about the perfect, these two silk screens together turn out to be about the perfect size for this oil and vinegar bottle. It just happened to be perfect. So I'm doing the same thing, and I'm kind of just letting these flop, but let me kind of here. I want you to see how I'm doing the same thing here. And you see I'm using like a rolling motion. That'll help to get it to meld together. And really, once you have this, see, it's now covering the whole bottle. I know this is not going to come off. Unless I happen to crack it or something, it's not coming off. And so I decided I was just going to kind of follow the contour of the glass here and let it do its thing. That's how I did it before on this other one. Just around here. I'm going to cut off this extra on the top because I'm probably going to just piece those on. That's how I did it on the last one. So once I have it coming around that edge, I'm going to just cut off the extra. But you can do this any way you want. You could continue to add up. It's just the most important part is getting your base done so that you know you don't have any air pockets and you know that it's covered. I personally, when I'm adding stuff to glass, do not like to overlap the clay. That makes a breakage spot, which can be really annoying. So what I'll do is if it's going to look like it's going to overlap, I pull off the bottom layer there and then just piece it. So that's how I add on to it. And actually, I'm going to cut this right here because that's a good spot, right where the tiles are. Might help if I use the sharp end of the blade. You could cut this before, you could figure it out, you know, how high it's going to go and cut it before you put it on. You know me, I just kind of go with the flow. Okay, so here, and this is, let me give you an idea. You might have things go astray on you. So you can just kind of cut pieces off if it gets out of whack for you. Like here, it ripped a little. So I'm not going to worry about it because, like I said, I can always come back and add more clay. If I don't like something, I just cut it off. Here it's about to overlap. You don't want that, so let me cut this off. But all when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're not trapping air pockets. Once again, I messed that up. I should have trimmed the bottom first. Let me do that. Let me go back. I got ahead of myself. So let's trim off the bottom here. You can kind of just go along like this, or I'm going to show you, you can just kind of go around it and you get a nice cut edge. Just use your finger to get off any extra. You don't want to roll into it. Yeah, so definitely cut off your bottom if you've got extra pieces so that you don't get that messed up. All right. Yes. And so let's finish up here. And so now I'm just going to kind of push it all down and make sure that it's got a nice bond with the glass. You can, like I said, you can use any tools you have to kind of run it across. This also helps to make sure that there aren't any air pockets trapped too by running your rod across. And so at this point then, we can continue on up. And let me see here. Let me wrap it around here. Really, it's just a matter of doing what you want at this point. That's what I do. I kind of just like let it decide for itself with what I have left over as far as clay goes. That's what I did. But like I said, I really do not like to overlap the clay because then it creates like a point for where it's higher and can break a lot easier. Again, this is a little tricky. You want to make sure, once again, that there is no air trapped in there. And I'm just using my ultimate tool here to kind of smooth it out. And that's all there is to it. Just remember those tips. You know, you can certainly keep adding things onto it. I see now, okay, so I see an air pocket. You want to come in either with your ultimate tool or a blade and poke it and then get that air out. You do not want that air in. It will cause you problems later. And you can correct it. So don't feel like everything's lost. Oh my gosh, you have an air pocket. No. Just go back and fix it and you'll be on your way. And that's really all there is to it. Covering glass is not hard. It really isn't. It's just remember those tips and you will be golden. And let your tools help you out. So I got just one little more piece up here. Let's piece this part in. Let's see. This is how I always did things. I just pieced it. And you know, the idea is it's your art. You can do what you want. You're the one who's probably, you know, going to be displaying it unless you sell it. So just do stuff you like. So, and you can add as much as you want. It's really, you know, whatever looks good to you. And I'm just filling in that last remaining top part here. I cut off the extra. I don't want this to overlap. Sharp blade really helps. And I'm just peeling off any extra that I don't want. And then I like to use my hands to make sure that it's got a nice adhesion. I use the palm of my hands to help roll it. And smooth it out. And there you have it. I mean, it's really that simple to cover glass. How cute is that? And now I have an oil and vinegar set for my table. I probably and eventually might, well, I don't even know. I may not add any more extra embellishments. It's got a lot of details on it. I mean, those two silk screens have a lot of stuff going on, and it's really cute. You know, I might add an oil, an O for oil, or a V for vinegar. I don't know yet, but you can certainly do that with, you know, some letter stamps or whatever. So there you have it. I hope you aren't intimidated anymore to cover glass. There are so many different glasses and bottles and whatnot that you can have a lot of fun with. So again, I would bake this just at the normal temperature of the clay, whatever brand you're using. There's nothing special you need to do other than, like I said, make sure that all the air pockets are out before you bake it. So have fun covering glass and making lots of fun functional stuff. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.